Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. What's up?
Not much. What was that? That was a weird one.
Whatever.
What are you doing over there?
We're post-football season. I get squirrely.
Yeah, that's true. You do.
Yeah.
I get weird, Bram.
Yeah. MCPS strikes again. Thanks, guys.
Oh, I forgot about this.
I was nice yesterday.
Oh, here we go, Jim. Here we go, Jim.
It snowed a decent amount. The roads were icy. You canceled school yesterday. Fine. Yesterday, you didn't need to do that. And then you did it at 7:22 a.m., guys. For what reason? What changed between last night and 7:22 a.m. that made my kids stay home today? Which, by the way, they're very happy about and celebrating.
Oh, I mean,
so whatever.
5-day weekend? Are you kidding me? These are the best snow days ever.
And then my daughter's already pointed out, I guess snow's in the forecast again later this week, and therefore.
Yeah, it is.
So thanks, guys. Thanks. Not speaking for my children who are pumped about what's going on, but you've struck again. Never change, guys. Never change. What, one school couldn't get their bus down one street to pick up one kid? Is that what happened? Because, I don't know, it doesn't seem like much changed out there that forced you to do this. I would love an economic study of what happens when you do this and how much, work is lost in the entire region when you do something like this.
It's January. Who cares? No one's working since December anyway.
It's just an election year, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's busy.
It's the beginning of 2024. It's not the end yet.
All right. They strike. Thanks.
By the way, I just want to point this out. I'm not.
You don't have kids. I don't know if I want your opinion on this, but go ahead.
I have one thing that I think maybe you'll agree on. Why are we not doing the hybrid snow day class from home thing?
I agree.
Didn't we do?
We did it for a year and a half.
Yeah, over a year. Didn't we do it for? Didn't you? You have to remind me on this. Wasn't there an entire calendar year where they didn't go to school?
Correct.
So we can't say digital learning in the morning, then snow day afternoon.
They all have computers that were given
Chromebooks,
to them,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, we can do this.
I don't want to be that guy because now I'm hated by every child that listens to our show. We know there's one child that listens to our show.
There's one.
But
yeah,
I'm just pointing it out.
But that person's the minority of our listenership who all agree with this. Get them in school.
It's like, shut up, man.
Yeah, get them in school. I didn't mind yesterday. I said, it's fine. It snowed. It's fine.
And it's 4-day weekend, so it's a nice little.
It's fine.
Yeah, right.
Today was ridiculous. You told me 2-hour delay last night. All right.
Everyone sleeps in.
Okay, I'm all right with that. And then 7:22 a.m.? Why? What happened?
Right.
What changed? What changed?
I mean, I will say this. Humble brag. I ran 5 miles this morning. The sidewalks were not great.
Wow. Well, yeah. Well, that's a dangerous thing to do, what you did.
Right. But I live right by NIH, and NIH has it all figured out. So I did the loop there. But every time I veered off to try to go either further up Old Georgetown or further up Rockville Pike, mess.
I would like
very messy.
Would you please clip the part where you just said NIH has it all figured out and send it over to the guys down the hall? Mike Callow says, quote, NIH has it all figured out.
When it comes to snow clearing.
Send that to Aaron Rodgers at the Pat McAfee show. Right. See what he says about that.
But fully aware, the old trolley trail that goes around that thing is going to be clear because they have actual people that go out and clear that out. And that was fine. I just had to run it 2 times because I wasn't really going to veer off.
All right.
So I'm just telling you, the normal sidewalks were not great.
Yeah, well, of course not.
Slipping a little bit.
Still, what are we talking about here? Can't we just say be careful? What's wrong with that? Be careful.
And when someone can't stop their car and they accidentally hit somebody.
I hear you, but that could happen on a rainy day.
You're right.
Can't we just be careful here? Let's just be careful out there, guys. That's all. And they better go to school tomorrow, MCPS, because last time I checked, it's sunny right now and there's no precipitation in the forecast. Come on.
Here's the cheat code.
Put the salt down. Let's go.
Here's the cheat code of why MoCo always closes. And we figured this out because I grew up in Olney and I went to Sherwood. And what we figured out fast, because we were friends with some of the people, was MoCo, it is all of it. And so Those people up in Damascus,
yes,
completely different animal than what you're getting here in Bethesda.
That's the problem. That was my pointed, didn't want to say it, but there's one street somewhere in Montgomery County that couldn't get plowed, and because those kids can't go to school, you have to take everybody out, which is stupid. It's just a stupid rule, and everybody who's a parent here has been yelling about this for years, and I would run on this. If I was Steve Solomon and running for the Montgomery County Council, the thing I would run on is we're going to put zones in Montgomery County. It's too big of a county because if one thing goes wrong in one small pocket of it, you've decided the whole county has to shut down. That shouldn't have to be the case.
Right.
Can't we just deal with Damascus had to close? We will have your idea, virtual learning for those people, everybody else as you were. Why is this so hard? It's a big area. Yes, there are more. I still have a hard time with, I've been to Poolsville in recent years. It's a lot different than when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Stop telling me they don't have modern transportation there. They do. Trains go there. Buses go there. There's a lot of really new townhouses that cost $1 million there. So stop telling me that they don't have modern amenities, that they can't handle this anymore. When I was a kid and it was a farm, like, okay, but it's not anymore. It's not.
The most
Steve Solomon.
I've ever seen you.
Steve, when you run again, because I know you will, stop going on library cards or whatever it is that you're talking about. This is the issue that parents want. They want their kids to go to school when the conditions allow for them, like today. It's been going on my entire life. We shut down the school systems, sometimes for good reason, and a lot of times for today, no reason. None. And there's none given. Why'd you shut it down? Because we did. Okay, I guess none of us will go to work again.
Whatever.
All right, whatever. I'm here.
One thing I will say is this. If it's more than one day, that's when the digital kicks in. Because I do think snow days should exist.
Oh, of course. Like I said, I had no problem with yesterday.
Yeah.
It snowed a good amount for this area.
Yeah. And it kept
you know
snowing,
what? And I am for when the kids get a snow day. It was the first time in 2 years we had one.
Yeah.
Let them have it.
Right. And it kept snowing.
I'm all for that.
It wasn't just for a few hours.
I had no issue with it yesterday. I thought the conditions were not great. They were not totally improving. It wasn't worth it to go in late. You know, this isn't New England. Okay, fine. It is crazy, having lived in Connecticut for 7 years, how they handle snow so differently than we do.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they get blizzards and they go to school that day.
Yeah, right.
Because they somehow have figured out that they can plow the streets.
Well, because it's infrastructure.
I guess.
It's built in.
Yeah. Well, it's also a lot less plowing to do. There's a lot less per capita to deal with.
Sure.
So I understand all of that.
Right.
But, like, it's just enough with Poolsville just couldn't get this one street plowed again, so the whole county has to shut down. How about go there first then? Why don't we try that then? Send the National Guard there first, fix their problem since they're the issue.
Kevin tweets in at both of us. It's also the teachers couldn't get to work, and if a child gets
What do you mean
hurt,
they couldn't?
And if a child gets hurt or killed, then someone has to pay. So
that means they should never go to school ever.
Well,
okay? Because
it's a whole
guess
other
what?
can of worms.
It rains a lot here too. What if a child gets hurt on a rainy day?
Right.
Just enough. Is a city councilman Kevin on Twitter or no?
No, don't go after him.
Solly's on my side on this. Maybe I should run for the county council. And that would be my issue. I'm a single issue parent. I am tired of this lackadaisical county that can't figure out how to get most kids to school when the conditions don't warrant closing the schools.
Touchdown, Moco.
Yeah, touchdown. Yeah, Damascus, you guys suck, okay? You're going virtual today.
You said it.
All right? And they're like, we like it this way. And I'm like, well, then stop building townhouses that cost $800,000, guys. If you like it that way so much.
Man.
Okay, let's stick to sports.
That's an open right there.
Ron Rivera speaks. John Keim spoke to him. Wrote a piece today after speaking with the former Commanders coach. And the headline is, he has said out loud, he's not done coaching. And with a caveat, and I think it is being self-aware of what happened here for 4 years, even, this is a quote from Keim, even if it's no longer as the person in charge. So he is openly saying, I would be a defensive coordinator.
Okay.
I don't have an issue with this. Like, I'm not like trying to make some kind of issue with it. I'm just telling you what he said.
Yeah.
I'm going to read you what he said. And I don't know why he wouldn't be a viable candidate to do that,
right,
frankly.
because he doesn't have anything to do except run the defense in that, and which, as we saw here, when it comes to on-field stuff, he still is fine at doing that.
Here's the actual part. I know a lot of people, when I say this, will disagree with me because of the results that were here, but I would say this anyway with full confidence, that while I don't think he would be a top candidate, especially this year with the crop of candidates that are out there, if he got another head coaching job and was just the head coach and not in charge of any of these other things that he was in charge of, I would be open to the idea that he would be successful with that.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of people probably would disagree with me, but I've talked about this a lot since he left. Like, his biggest strength was he knows how to motivate these guys. Mm-hmm. The guys do play for him. This year was different. I think it was his own fault. And I think when I read some of these quotes, he's acknowledging a lot of that. But if he just went back to what his specialty is, which is motivating players, and he was able to hire a good staff around him, which is questionable too, I would be open to the idea that he could be successful as a head coach again. But I don't know that, but I would be open to that idea. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to get that opportunity, not in the near term, partially because of the lack of success that he's had here in recent years, the end of his tenure in Carolina, which I don't think was totally his fault because he got the new owner, and Cam was hurt. Cam was not the same player. Cam was hurt, and they were stuck with a contract, and they tried with him, and he just couldn't be the same guy that he was. And you know how it goes. If you don't have a quarterback, you have a hard time winning.
Right.
So I think, for him, there are some circumstances to take into account, but I wouldn't actually, if somebody was, kind of in this spot where they're like, we've got a pretty good veteran team, and we think we've got the makings of being pretty good, and they were like, we just want a steady hand in here. Well, he is one of them.
Right.
So I wouldn't put that past him. I don't think he's going to get that opportunity. I was talking about this with Keim last night, and I feel like this year's very different with the coaching candidates. I think Ben Johnson's going to be our next head coach, but I don't know that for sure because I think there's going to be interest in him, and we'll just have to see if he wants this job or if he gets overwhelmed with an offer somewhere else is what I'm worried about mainly with him. But think about the crop of candidates that are out there this year. This actually feels unusual. It is. There are really, really, really good candidates that aren't going to get a job because there's not enough openings for them.
Yes.
Do you want the arguably the greatest coach of all time? You can get him. Yep. Do you want Mike Vrabel, who's won big at a non-traditional market, was a 1 seed with a okay team and an okay quarterback, who's now just available to you and young enough to go second go-around? It's fine. Yep. Do you want Jim Harbaugh, who has won literally everywhere he has gone, NFL or college, just came off a national championship in Michigan, was in 3 straight NFC championship games when he last was in the NFL. Do you want him? Comes from a family of winners. Do you want him? Right. You could have him. And then there are what appears to be 2 or 3 really good second chance candidates to be a head coach. Raheem Morris, Dan Quinn, namely, are clearly could be in line to get a job and should get another opportunity. Look at what they've done with the defenses of those 2 teams and what people say about them with leadership. Or you could go the route, which I think we're going to go, and a lot of teams are going to go. There are 4 or 5 in this bucket of first-time head coaches that people are all there are really good options. So this is probably one of the deepest candidacy years that I've seen in a while, which I think is why I'm waiting for Dallas and Philadelphia to make a move, because I don't know how they come off of what happened, knowing that some change of course has to happen and that there are viable candidates to be the head coach there, even in the positions that they're in. And that's why I'm waiting. I'm surprised, actually. We haven't heard about either one of them yet, just because the candidacies, it's so vast and deep, and your array of choices is greater than most years. You don't typically have you could have Belichick or you could have Ben Johnson, and both of which have these extremely viable candidacies for very, very different reasons. It's very rare you have a spectrum of candidates like that. Yep. So I think Rivera has almost no shot at selling himself in that mode. But if he goes and is a DC for somebody next year, then I don't know that it's out of the realm that somebody wouldn't look at him that way again at some point. It'd have to be the right place at the right time. And I would argue, and I think he says this in this article, and I'll read some of the quotes, he recognizes where his strengths now are and what got in his way here.
Well, here's the other thing, too, though. In today's modern NFL, nobody wants an old coach, unless your name is Bill Belichick.
No, I think
Jim
Harbaugh. Yeah,
and those are the guys that they're willing to sacrifice that.
I
for.
agree, but and this guy's not old, but he's been around forever. If Tomlin left the Steelers, would be a line out the door for him too.
Yes, yeah, of course, yes.
So, he's not old, but he's old in terms of having been around the block.
Right.
Like if Andy Reid for some reason was like, I'm leaving Kansas City, somebody would offer him a job the next day.
Yeah, of course.
Like that would happen.
What I'm getting at is like you don't really see the middle-aged to older guys get their first shot anymore. Like it is a list of people. It is a short list of people that have shown sustained success either in one place or a couple of places, or have built themselves back up like Quinn, essentially. Like Quinn, I think is what would have to happen. Ron's not getting a head coaching shot somewhere, so
I don't think he is either.
So somebody's going to have to say, let's bring him on as the defensive coordinator because clearly he knows what works now.
Yeah, I think so. All right, so on all of this stuff, like where he's basically come around to, I'd like to remain a coach. Yeah. So that's what that's why he talked to Keim. I think it wasn't to rehash everything. Of course, Keim's going to ask him to rehash everything.
Right.
But like it was, the purpose for doing the interview was, I want my name out there because I want people to understand that I'm not ready to ride off into the sunset. Yeah. That's the purpose of why he did this. Obviously, why he did this interview
Can I
today.
Take one, Barb?
Yeah.
Good job, Keim. Way to go to the local guy, Ron.
Well, but I mean, again, he's trying to reach a national audience, so you talk to the person at ESPN.
No, I know, but still. Okay. He could have gone to Fowler. Could have gone to Van Natta.
Could have gone to his boy Breer.
Could have. That's what I'm saying.
But,
so,
I appreciate
Ron.
Keim got it.
Thanks
good
for
for Keim. He got it. So here's his quote. He said this on, having been a defensive coordinator in the past, having not been for a long time, having been a head coach, and getting the juices flowing again by doing it down the stretch of the season. He said this. Sometimes you do have to take a step back. You have to take a step back and learn and grow from it. It's like I told the other players, if you look at this year as a lost year, you're hurting yourself. You should look at it as a year to learn and understand why things happen. This was probably the greatest learning experience I've had in a while this year. I mean, a lot of things came to light at certain times this past season that I'm going forward that are going to really help me. You know what? Like, that's honest.
That's life. That's good for him. It is. Like good for him. Like I'm glad he said it. That's life.
Which is why I do want to reiterate. I know people are just bashing him, but I'm like, I don't think he's a bad coach. I don't ever think he was. I never thought he was a bad coach. Yeah. I think the things he wasn't particularly good at were the things that were his unraveling.
Yeah.
And I think he's basically admitting that now. Like where he was amazing, honestly, and a lot of guys are like this, but it is half the battle. He gets them to play hard. Is Dan Campbell a really good schematic tactician? I don't know. Is that his coordinators doing that? Maybe, Is Dan Campbell a great person in a press conference? Kinda, but not great. He's kind of weird, actually. But I'll tell you what, those guys play hard for him. Mm-hmm. That's half the battle in the NFL. You got to get guys to buy in for whatever reason. They got to want to play for you. That whole adage of these guys are going to run through a wall for you, you kind of need them to do that. Ron is capable of it. I've seen it. It didn't happen this year for a lot of reasons that I think were his fault, frankly. But those first 3 years, they did.
Yep.
They did.
Right. Yep.
His undoing was him being the GM.
Yes.
He wasn't capable of putting together a team that could win. He got them to play hard, but he didn't have a team that could win. That's his fault.
Yep.
So on that stuff, he said this. He mentioned, this is from Keim, he mentioned delegating authority and wanting to be given information that he needed to know, not just what someone thought he wanted to know, was important for him, which I'm not exactly sure what exactly that meant. But then he said this. He said at times, quote, stupid stuff would be brought to him, and it made no sense that those things would be brought to his attention. He declined to say what those things were, but said it was just stuff that shouldn't have been put on the head coach's plate. But at the time I was dealing with it, I wasn't necessarily the head coach as I was a manager. But you asked to be in that position.
Yep.
He gives another quote here that I'm going to read in a second, which I think is the money quote of all money quotes, where he's kind of walking back that he didn't want all of that responsibility. And the idea that he didn't want the job that didn't come with all the responsibility is frankly revisionist history.
What I'm going to guess there on that first quote before we read the next one is I think that's like, we're talking like crest business.
Maybe.
Like just things that were, happening around the team, but had nothing to do with his duties, essentially.
I know, but okay, the head coach shouldn't be dealing with the agents all the time.
Right.
Shouldn't be dealing with the quote-unquote stupid stuff. That's why other people are in the organization, to deal with the stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Every organization has it. Everybody's got their jobs and delegated to deal with it. The job that Adam Peters is taking on, like I like the way Josh Harris put it. That's an 80-hour-a-week job. The head coaching job's an 80-hour-a-week job. We had a guy who was doing both of them.
Right.
That doesn't really make any sense. And I agree that a proper organization has people delegated to deal with things. And Rivera, without being specific, and I don't know what he's referring to, so I'm not like hiding it. I don't know what he's referring to either. I can take a guess at some of it, but I don't know what he's referring to specifically. He's basically saying the job was too much for one person. True. But I would say back to him, I think you knew that by year 3. And I think if you went and said, we need to change this, or you could have said, I actually do trust Marty Herney and Martin Mayhew. However, anyone who's listening to this thinks that. But let's just say his thinking was, I do trust them to do all of this. I want to separate this. I just want to be the head coach. They're going to take care of all that. He could have done that.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
he didn't do that.
Right.
So his unraveling, in my opinion, is of his own making. And it was clear as day, he's even admitting this now, the mistakes and the learning experience I learned was, I probably should have done this differently, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And things may or may not have worked out differently. We don't know.
Right. I mean, the other fact of the matter is you had to do all of that, and I don't blame him for taking on those responsibilities. You had to do it to keep Dan at bay because Dan was away from the team for the most part, but as Jay will say, walked off the yacht and picked a first-round pick quarterback when no one wanted him. So it's like you did want this to protect yourself from the owner. So
yes, when he came in, we're damn good culture.
Right.
He's brought in to solidify and stabilize an organization.
Yes.
He's also told from the outside, like they're saying about Tepper, don't go there.
That's right.
Okay?
Right.
That's
and
what they're saying.
Rightfully so, by the way.
They're saying that to him, right? But at the same time, and I always said this, a million times when everyone says nobody wants that job, first of all, there's one of 32. Watch, the Panthers are going to hire a very viable candidate.
Sure. Yeah.
Watch, it will happen. 3, I'm sorry, there's nothing wrong with being a head coach of an NFL football team. And so, but he, to protect himself, felt he needed to insulate the whole thing.
Right.
I've said this in hindsight too, and I've talked about this in hearing Adam Peters and Josh Harris talk about collaborative efforts, aligned vision, everybody rowing the boat the same way. The reality is that organization wasn't set up for anybody to trust anybody.
Yep.
So Rivera closed the circle. In the end, he needed to open it up more as things solidified and calmed down, but he didn't do that. And we had the same problem in his administration as we had in the previous ones. We didn't have everybody on the same page. We didn't know exactly what everybody was doing, who's undermining who, all of that type of stuff. He's wary of everything he knows, is dealing with, and wants to protect himself. And I understand all of that, but how's that a functioning organization? It isn't.
Right.
Now we have a new day. Is this really going to play out this way? Certainly words matter. Actions so far seem to matter. Josh Harris is aligning himself with a lot of people to think through decisions. He's brought in a person he's empowering to have the decision-making process. That person says, I'm going to, help find the coach. We're going to work in lockstep and we're going to work. That all sounds great.
Right.
It's not what we've had here. Mm-hmm. And this predates Rivera being here. And I understand why he wanted to insulate himself initially. By year 3, though, once he realized that maybe doing the personnel is not his strength.
Should have been by year 2, honestly.
Yes.
But
again, this is all tricky. Year 1's COVID. He had cancer.
Yep.
They actually made the playoffs. Year 2, all right, run it back. Let's see what we got here now. They do. It's the same thing, middle of the road, not good enough to win the division this time because the other division teams didn't totally flame out, right? And then he's got to change the roster again. By year 3, I think that would have been the point where it should have been like, you know what, maybe I need to either turn this all over to the people I trust and really actually separate it or, bring someone else in. He didn't do that.
Which, by the way, is unfortunate because I remember he was the first one in year 2 to do, guys, calm down. We did go 7-9. Let's chill out with the best defensive line ever talk. And
he did.
He was like, that's what I think.
And warned us year 2. He said maturity's a problem with these guys. He was pushing it on them to say, you need to lead us. I actually didn't have a problem with that.
No, and I'm with you. And that's why I think I'm more disappointed in all of it is because he was actually the only one to be like, calm down, everybody.
Yeah.
We're not going to the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
He was being really realistic with what he had. And yet now, like after year 4, he's saying what you and I were thinking for a year or two of Ron, the personnel guy, hurt Ron, the coach.
Correct.
Like, how did you not see that when you were seeing other things in year 1? Like that's where I'm most disappointed.
Then once you do get to year 3, and he verbalized it, you have to start winning in year 3.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Right.
And you have no
you
one
really
to
need to win in year 2, honestly.
And you have no one to blame but yourself if you're in control of the personnel.
Right. Correct. Exactly.
So if you don't have the team that you want or think you can win with, whose fault is that?
Correct. Exactly.
It's your fault, right?
And remember, too, in year 1, because there was no preseason, he treated those first 4 games as preseason like Haskins, which was insane at the time.
Yes.
But clearly there was some agreement between him and Dan to go,
correct,
you need to start Dwayne for a quarter of the season to see how it goes, and he did that.
Right. And I've seen some people revisionist right, and I don't think they're totally wrong, that the first move he should have said was, I'm playing the quarterback I want to play. I'm in charge here. You have to listen to me and trust me. I'm the guy who's coached for a very long time and been in a Super Bowl. I know what a good quarterback looks like. I had an MVP. This guy ain't it.
Right.
And I agree with that, but to walk in the door, it seemed to be this was I'll give you everything, but I want my guy to play quarterback, and it was the one thing he said, fine, we'll give him the first shot, and clearly did not have to play him the whole year because it only took a month before he benched him.
Yeah, 100%. And he was
once it became clear that he's not ready now, then it became that time, and then everything spiraled on Dwayne personally outside with spiraled's the wrong word. He made some mistakes that kind of, especially at times of the year where you just can't make these mistakes. Like you pointed out, A.J. Brown going to a boxing match. You know, like, is that really the worst thing ever? No, but it's a really bad look when he's not going to play on a team that's totally collapsed and is about to lose to a team that's not as good as them.
And he's flaunting ringside and not laying low. Like,
right.
Yeah, and then Haskins was, doing parties and stuff.
I want to read. There's a real money quote here that I want to read next. Let me take a quick break. Brad, watch the show. ESPN 630, Sports Capital. All right. John Keim has a piece where he did speak with former Commanders coach Ron Rivera, who revealed to him he would like to still coach, even if it means being a defensive coordinator now. That he would drop into that role, and he said he has options in front of him that he's surveying and looking at. But I want to go back to the stuff that we were talking about before, which was he had the coach-centric model, the single voice. He is painting it as if this was the deal that was placed in front of him by Dan Snyder, which I would say back to him, you could have not agreed to it.
That's right.
If you had a problem with it. And then secondarily, like Adam Peters, this is a good example of this. Adam Peters had interest to go to other places.
Right.
He turned down interviews with other places. He said he wanted to come here. And when asked why he wanted to come here, he cited the reasons why. And one of them was, I'm going to have control of this. It will be an aligned model, and I get to work with a new coach that I help pick, and we work together.
That's right.
Dan Snyder, I don't think, I can't speak for this, but I don't think said to him, you have to take this or it's not yours.
Right.
And Rivera can correct me if I'm wrong. I think Rivera welcomed that without knowing what goes into doing both of the jobs until you find out when you're on the job.
Right. I will say, push back on one little thing. Dan would still spend wherever he was asked, but I will say, wouldn't shock me if Dan was like, do you want to run the team too? Then I don't have to hire a GM.
Correct.
But say it like I just said it, kind of. Like, not make it well, if you want to come here, Ron, you need to run everything.
I really don't think.
Right.
I have a hard time buying. Like, if he went to him and said, I really do want to run this, but I need to bring in my general manager.
Right.
Marty Herney.
Right. Because that didn't happen until year 2.
Why wouldn't that have happened?
Right. Because that didn't happen until year 2, right?
Right.
Remember, he didn't fill out, he didn't hire any of those major voices until year 2. So, yeah, like,
I'd like to contact Dan from the yacht and get a comment on this.
Amazing. No off the field stuff, just this.
No off the field stuff. I'm not going to get you in trouble with the FBI, but I do want to talk to you about, he's saying that you positioned it this way. I'm going to bet he would say, yes, I did offer him that. He easily could have said, I want to be the head coach and hire my own GM, and I would have said yes, because when did he ever say no to those things? And see, that would actually be out of the character of Snyder.
Yes.
When he wants somebody and that person says they want something, he typically got it for them.
Right. Like, that's what I was going to say, is Dan never struck me as the guy to think outside of the box or present scenarios to somebody to say, do you want to do this? It was always, tell me what you want to do and I'll make it happen by spending the money or flying the jet out somewhere or whatever. That's what Dan did best. And I think Dan knew that.
That was Dan's strength.
Well. Yes,
if Dan stayed out, this is the same thing. If Rivera stayed out of the personnel stuff, we might have had a different result.
Yes.
If Dan was just the closer,
That's right.
this is what we need. He had the right people advising him and said, this is what we need. That was his best attribute.
Correct. Yes.
He was able to get the deals done with all of these people.
Yes.
Players, coaches, whatever. He always got it done.
Yes.
All right. Here is his response on being in that model.
Okay.
I would have loved a different model just because in hindsight, now you really see how much more time you spend on personnel. And as a coach, that's not necessarily what you want to do. What I really enjoyed more than anything else the last 5 weeks was just being right in the middle of everything. And now your only focus is just that one thing. That's what you do. You want to teach. Why did it take 3.5 years to come to the conclusion that that's what you wanted to do when the reality was like, it was so obvious that your best attribute was being in the room, speaking clearly to the players and them responding to you.
Yep, right, exactly. And then you lost it right away when you changed the structure.
You gave up too much authority to the other people. I've talked about this so much throughout this year. When he ceded over, I don't think Eric Bieniemy was a bad hire. I think he was a very good hire. However, what became abundantly clear from the spring into the summer was he's going to be the bad cop. There better be a good cop. That's and he's always been the good cop. But he's a tough good cop. Well, he stopped being the cop.
Yeah, right.
He went into retirement. There was a new chief in charge.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And that new chief was a my way or the highway guy, and not everybody in the rank and file liked it.
Right, exactly.
And then when they went back to the chief in charge, he said, I'm retired from that, guys. And then it was too late. By the middle of the season, he went, I better find out if I like this coaching thing.
Right, exactly.
So he did. All right, on Sam Howell.
Oh, boy.
This is a pretty good quote, and I actually think it is spot on. And I called this from the get-go. I said, he's taking a big bet on this guy. Here's his quote. I took a big gamble.
Oh, there you go.
I put a lot on Sam, and I probably shouldn't have put as much pressure on him.
Yeah, no bleep, Sherlock.
And I think that was probably one of the mistakes I made this year. He didn't deserve to have that put on him. He's a good young quarterback, has some talent and some ability, and I think that's something I should have backed off on. I should have kept emphasizing he was going to be the guy that got the first opportunity. Just phrasing it that way would have taken a lot of pressure off of him, just kind of that he hadn't been anointed. 100%.
Yeah, dude.
Nobody understood at this time last year when he was doing this and saying, Sam Howell's our guy.
Yeah, right.
No one believed it. Remember? They were like, and they're going after Lamar. And I kept saying to everybody, I go, guys, the same thing with the Belichick thing. The whole time I'm like, they're not, because I know they're not. You know, like, and in the same way, I'm like, they're not going after Lamar because I know they're not. You could say they're crazy. You're fine for saying that, but they're not. And I'm like, he's serious when he talks about Hal this way, and we'll just have to see how that plays out, whether it's Heineke or someone else as his backup, because that is what they're telling you they're going to do. And I also have reservations about anointing that off of one game at the end of the year that didn't matter for them. And oh, by the way, go look at his numbers. It wasn't like he blew the doors off of anything. He played well. But it was a meaningless end-of-season game that he came in and had an opportunity, played well in it, but in no way, shape, or form should it have turned into, he's at least admitting this now, turned into what it did, which was, we've got our guy. Finally, he's here. Who thought that? I was open to, let him compete. Like after that and after the year and knowing what I knew about him and, knowing what his disposition is and knowing what his talent was and knowing what his draft stock was before his senior year, I'm like, give him a shot to compete.
Right.
To compete. Don't anoint him anything. And he's admitting now that was a big mistake. And he put a tremendous amount of pressure on him. Then they brought in a new coordinator. Then they changed everything in front of him. And frankly, the offensive line wasn't good enough. And he took a beating.
Well, here's the
and everyone's every week was, is he still your guy? Is he the guy of the future? And at some point in the middle of the season, I go, I'm done talking about whether he's going to be the quarterback in 2029. Why are we talking about that?
Well, because that's what
because
he
did it.
He was preaching.
He preached that. That's what I tried to say all along. It's his messaging that got him in trouble. He hung himself with his own words so many times. He didn't have to do that. I don't know why he did it, but he did. And it was one of the major, and he at least admits it now, one of the major mistakes. And I saw it in real time. I'm like, why are you saying this? Let him compete for the job. if Brissett, when they brought Brissett in, I went, thank God. They actually have a real competitive person for him. This is better than Heineke, like a better prospect than Heineke. This is good. But he never really got a shot to do it.
What I was going to say was, per usual, Ron backed himself into a narrative corner.
Correct.
And so he couldn't bench Hal for Brissett because he said, oh my God, he's the future, he's the guy, whatever, because then he would be wrong, even though the decision to actually bench Hal would have been right halfway through the year. And once again, the saddest part is, in hindsight, Brissett came in and ran the offense better than Hal ever did at the end of the year. And we knew we weren't going anywhere with Brissett for future-wise, what I'm getting at there. Like, long-term, he was not the solution. But right then and there, you're thinking to yourself, God, Ron, had you just done this after week 5, they might have been fighting for a playoff spot by the end of it.
Hal, I saw this with Patrick Ramsey, and it worried me early when he was taking all these hits.
Seeing ghosts.
Yes, he was seeing ghosts by the end of the year. They even tried to keep selling that he wasn't, and it was like hard for me to sit there and bite my tongue because I'm like, you're not talking to someone who doesn't watch a lot of film and doesn't talk to a lot of people and doesn't know what I'm looking at. And it was like, I don't think so.
Right.
I've seen this before, and we see this in baseball a lot. Like, I think everybody's wary to bring up pitchers too soon because if they get shelled early, their confidence changes. And that can be ruinous for them. And a quarterback's the same way. They have to be extremely confident. His confidence was shaken by the middle to late part of the season. Then the competition ratcheted up. And then it got
better teams,
and then it got bad.
Right.
Then it got bad. And it is of their own making. The environment has to be right for someone to succeed in it. And it's their fault that his season went this way. They probably, after he took as many hits as he did, and they were losing like some of the games they lost, it might have been good at the time in hindsight to give him a breather at the time, but they backed themselves into this corner that he's the quarterback of the future, and they kept demanding it and just kind of like you don't seem to understand that this guy, and then everything became growth and development. And this is the first time he's seeing all this, but we believe this is going to happen instead of just being in the present, letting it play out. And look at the 49ers right now. I think they're a very good example of this. Had they been as hard-headed about Trey Lance, had they been, and not flexible enough to realize maybe we're better off going in a different direction, even if we take a bunch of heat for it, because this isn't going the way we want it to go. I know what we spent on it. We're going to get, spanked by everybody for spending the amount of draft capital that we did to go get this guy, and he's clearly not right now the guy for us. But we do have this other alternative. We can turn to him, but they've never, ever said, well, now we know Brock Purdy's the guy who's going to be here for the next 8 years. They've never done that. They moved on. They've gotten really good play out of him. They're never anointing him anything.
Well, no.
They never backed themselves into some corner with him. They never backed themselves into a corner with Lance, even after what they did. Sure. They never sat there and said, we don't care what you think or what you see. We're going to play him. And it would have been at their detriment because clearly he wasn't ready for the position. Doesn't mean he won't be somewhere else, and he's better off being somewhere else because of what happened there. But they were willing to do it. This team staked a position they never should have staked.
Before you move on from the Niners, though, they did the most important part, though. They won. So whenever you make a decision like that and you win,
that's right.
Nobody can say a damn thing about it.
That's right.
And so the problem here is with Ron, he'd make a decision, and when the losing would start, he wouldn't just wait a couple weeks. It was months, and the season was over with by the time he'd make some of these dumb decisions and not just go in a different direction. Sometimes that's all you need is a spark the other way.
Ron's strength is motivation. That's what he's really good at, which is why I think if he actually went back as a position coach, defensive coordinator, he might succeed at that. Because if that's all he's doing is getting his guys to play hard, well, I know he can do that. I saw that firsthand over and over, which is why I was like, don't underestimate the fact that this team plays really hard for this guy. It didn't this year, but they have. So that's his strength. But the two things he was really not good at, messaging, getting stuck in narratives that he created.
Yeah, right.
He created them. And I kept saying, you're hanging yourself with your words because if this doesn't go the right way, you have to be self-aware enough to back off of it and change gears and be willing to take the hit and move on and not worry about what people like me or the other stations or the Washington Post is writing about you. But they were too worried about that. They were sensitive. They, quote, had to be right. They had to be right so much they were drastically wrong.
Right.
So he was bad at that. And as it turns out, he did not build a roster that was ready to compete. And so that was not his strength either. He's admitting that now. I wasn't up for the task of building the roster.
Correct.
I found out the hard way. And he, like in one of his other faults, is he was always too slow to move on something that obviously wasn't working. That happened in little moments on the field all the time, positional changes, or in the case of this, being self-aware enough to go, you know what? I need to focus on coaching because that's what I'm good at and that's what I can make these guys do and that's what can make us successful. I need to turn over all this other administrative stuff and the roster build to the people I trust. And then we could sit here and argue, did Martin Mayhew and Marty Herney do a good job on the roster?
Sure,
instead of going, I'm not sure what they were doing for 4 years or 3 years while they were here.
Right.
We're not sure.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know. We know what their titles are. We don't know exactly what their job duties were, which is, that's a problem. So I love Ron. I'll always love Ron. I hope he does coaching games. It sounds like he wants to.
Yeah.
And I think he will. I would advocate because great man, very good motivator, good coach. You're getting a really good DC.
Yeah.
You are.
Sure. Yeah.
You are if you hire him. Him as a head coach again, it better just be as a head coach. Yeah. I think he's aware enough for that. He ain't running a personnel department again.
Yeah.
And he's not running a PR staff. All right, we'll be right back. Very much the show. ESPN 630 Sports Capital. I saw that Sean Doolittle was hired by the Nationals to be some kind of intermediary between the analytics department, the coaches, and the pitchers of the team.
Let me find his official.
I like when organizations hire good people who had great runs with them.
Yep.
This falls into that category.
He's also one of us, too. He moved back. He never moved out of the city. Yeah. Always has a place here. He and his wife live here. His official title, pitching strategist. Okay. Which is very Star Wars kind of. He's such a Star Wars guy. But basically, what it was explained, I want to say it was Dan Kolko who expounded upon this yesterday. Was that basically he will be the go-in between from the managers in the analytics data to the pitchers.
Okay.
So I guess he's going to take that info or quantify it in a way that's easily digestible to the pitchers and say, this is what's working, this is what's not working. And look, we've heard him talk. He's probably going to be really, really good at that. So.
I hope so. This is a very interesting year for their staff. Mm-hmm. It's time to find out what level is Josiah Gray.
Yep.
Mackenzie Gore is another one that let's see. Yep. I think we're going to find out what they are. I think this is the point in their career where you find out what level are these guys. Yes. They've had enough starts where you find out where they are. And I've kind of landed on, I think Gray is a 2-3 starter. That's what I think he is. I don't think he's an ace.
Yep.
But, I don't want to throw out the possibility that he's not.
Of course.
And same thing with Gore. I think Gore, to me, has a little higher ceiling, honestly.
I'd agree.
From what I've seen. But we're going to find out. And, later, will they have a lot of run support around them? Probably not. Will their record be very good? Probably not. But that doesn't mean they can't look the part.
Yep.
So let's see what happens. And if he's part of that, then great.
Yes.
That's the way I feel about
No,
it.
100%. And you also have guys like Rutledge who, have been touted as guys but have dealt with some injuries so haven't really come up. And you're going to have other stars that, are in the making like Wood and guys like Dylan Cruz who are probably going to get their first taste of the MLB. This is the year where if you're Mike Rizzo,
those are hitters though.
So no, I know, but but it does apply to those guys too. They're going to get their first taste of everything, and those are major guys that you've told us that are going to be the cornerstones here. So you're right though. Mike Rizzo has his work cut out for him because he's going to decide. All right, do I have a third or fourth pitcher here, or do I have a second and I just need to sign a fourth one in the coming years, something like that? So we'll see.
All right, let's talk about the Capitals here.
Yeah.
They won last night. They beat the Ducks 2-0.
Yeah, shut out.
You called this one, and my guy Carberry does it again, okay? Does it again. Sends a message to the starting goaltender of this team who makes a lot of money.
Yep.
Admits publicly, we've had a lot of conversations about that. Mm-hmm. And then you called it. They're going to throw him back out there in a home game against a team that can't score.
Right.
Show me.
Yep. Exactly right.
He did.
And granted, I will say on this one, it worked the other way as well. They seemed to be motivated in front of him. The defense played really well. He did not have to make the grade A stop either. And that's not to say stuff happens, but to get a shutout with your defense playing that well, I think that instills in the rest of the team, hey, when Darcy goes, he can have outings like this. And so, it was all in all a good effort. You could tell, though, the Ducks were at the tail end of a road trip, ready to go home because it was the last game before they were going to the West Coast. But you need to win games like that. And they did, and it was really a 1-0 game the entire time because Wilson got the empty netter at the end. So to go on a 1-0 game like that and lock things down.
You called it. We can't score. We were going to be in a 2-1 game or something like that. Right. And he put Kemper to the test.
Yes, exactly right. And so there it is. Like
they keep managing their way to stay in this.
Yes, correct.
Because they are. I'm looking at the standings. The sixth place team in the East is Toronto at 50 points. I don't see them leapfrogging short of a collapse by Carolina, Philly, Florida, New York, or Boston. That's probably not going to happen. So Toronto at 50, Detroit 49, Tampa 49, Pittsburgh 48, Washington 48, Islanders 48, Devils 47. You're staring at two teams out of six for two. You're two spots for six teams. What you're looking at.
Right.
And he's just manufacturing ways to keep them afloat long enough that maybe they sneak in. And that's why I love this dude. Like I for the first half of a season or whatever it is, because that's about where we are.
Yep.
He's done an outstanding job.
And go look at some of those other teams. Devils have goaltending issues. Toronto has goaltending issues. Penguins and the Caps are the Spider-Man meme right now. They're pointing at each other. They're the same team. Like there's neither one of them is better than the other. There's old and old stars. Flyers, does that wear out with Torts? Don't know, but he always has a shelf life wherever he goes. So We'll see if that keeps going. They're not going to catch the Rangers, as you just said. Maple Leafs have no goaltending, as I said as well. So
no, but they score so many goals that they're going to win too many games. Like they're the old Caps. Like they're just nights where they put a 5 spot up on people.
Correct. Right. There's also nights where they put up a 5 spot and
lose.
And your boy Samsonov lets in 6. So
most of the time, though. Most of the time.
Correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a dogfight. And look, it was nice to see Kemper do what he did last night, but the MVP of the first half of the season has been Charlie Lindgren. So, I mean, let's see how it goes. But you have a home and home with St. Louis. St. Louis isn't the best team in the world. So let's see if you can get a couple points out of them and start that road trip off strong. But, I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll look better down the stretch this year than they did last year.
I am obviously crazy for carbs. And
carbs.
And I've been even thinking about
crazy for carbs, and there's like a loaf of bread on the shirt.
Maybe. Yeah.
Assorted rolls.
He's got
bagels.
He could be like, I think like I'd like to get a wall of like the Andy Warhol paintings, like of Marilyn Monroe, but Carberry with that kind of odd, almost sheepish look he has behind the bench, especially when he doesn't get a call that he thinks he's going to get. I think that would be good for me.
I always love his demeanor because he's either shouting like every other coach or he does the smirk of like,
the smirk.
I know you effed up there.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
That's the look I'm talking about. I like that one.
Yeah, he's got both.
Let's see. All right, a few other things from their game last night.
Yes.
Well, a couple things. Okay, Ovi didn't play again.
Correct, yes.
I saw him, Carberry, I guess, goes on with the Junkies once a week.
Yep.
He said today, because I thought this was from the injury from Carolina, his leg got twisted up a little funny. And he said that isn't what it is.
Right.
He said it's other things.
Something else, yeah.
And obviously in hockey, they don't have to disclose anything. Mm-hmm. But that guy not playing and not over something that looked obvious as the reason why he's not playing is concerning to me.
Can I give you my theory on this?
Sure.
I, of course, saw this, and this is not me knowing any extra. This is just me trying to connect the dots. I think there must have been something that happened either early in the season or training camp or over the summer that maybe has been nagging at him. Because
something's up.
Right.
This guy plays through everything. So the fact that he's not, and then Carberry admitted it wasn't that thing where his leg got taken, because I was like, oh my God, did he severely sprain his ankle or something like that? Because that's what it looked like.
But look at it. He has had such a drop in production. Wouldn't it make sense that it's something nagging,
happened.
that something happened early on or over the summer, or they just said, or it was basically turned into, we're not scoring enough, so like, if you can go, let's go. But now that he's not scoring, maybe they're being precautionary and just going, you know what, you need to sit this out until you're back, because once you're back and you start scoring again, we're going to start winning games like crazy, because we're only losing games by a goal here and there.
Listen, he's not the same player he was.
Right.
But if you go watch him skate, he can't skate very well right now.
Yes.
Something's up.
Yeah, I agree. So
obviously now he's not playing, which Russian machine never breaks, right?
Yeah.
He's broken.
Yeah.
Now, why? We don't know. And maybe this would be good if something comes out that it was, because then it would make more sense, because the drop-off is so dramatic that, I've heard people say, like, who was it? Bruce Boudreau said, I coached Teemu Selanne. Teemu Selanne scored 40 goals a year. Then the next year,
it was like 15 or something.
He got old.
Yeah,
he goes, all of the sudden, and he's saying, I'm not saying that about Ovi, but I'm saying it might be the case. This would make a lot more sense to me that, like, all of a sudden, he's completely unproductive, probably because something's wrong, and here it is. He's not playing right now.
Right. And they're probably also telling him, hey, man, sit a few games out, get yourself right, and then if you come out and you score 10 goals in the next 15, 20 games,
and then we'll know you're back.
We'll know you're back, and you're gonna know you're back too. And so it wouldn't shock me too if he could have gotten a nagging injury that he's played through before and been completely fine, but
he's having a hard
when
time
you're pushing in your late 30s and you're skating, you don't push through it as much.
Obviously, I don't know. None of us know what's going on because they won't reveal anything. But the way he just said, I mean, my gut says there's going to be some disclosure of a core injury that's going on here. Yeah. That's my gut, but I obviously don't know. Yeah. The last thing, and I just saw this, Nick Dowd will be traded.
Yeah.
Like it was described today as teams are lining up, awaiting that he will be traded. So that's going to happen.
Correct. And that's just one of the ones you have earmarked because he's on an expiring contract. You're probably not going to extend him out, or you can give him a shot, trying to sign him, but he's going to not unlike be like Garnet Hathaway and Dmitry Orlov last year, where it is better for your team to trade a guy like that to a team that's pushing for the playoffs, get your first-round pick or your major prospect out of it. This is just simple math. They have to do moves like
this. Because they have some contracts. They're a couple years away from expiring out where they could rethink things like that.
I still think, by the way, like just throwing it out there, I still think you have to listen if anyone comes with a big offer for Lindgren. There are going to be teams that, like I just named, that don't have goaltenders, and if they want to go for a cup run and he happens to be a name that gets floated out there, I think you have to listen to a bunch of offers for him. Because
when's the deadline?
It's usually 1st of March, but I think they pushed it up a little bit. I have to look it up. I'm honestly not sure. But with Lindgren, by the way, too, you get 2 postseason runs with him.
2 postseason runs. All right, be right back. Bram Weinstein Show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital. The Indianapolis Colts have released a statement about Jim Irsay.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Said this. Mr. Irsay continues to recover from his respiratory illness. We will have no further comment on his personal health, and we continue to ask that Jim and his family's privacy be respected. What is clearly omitted from this statement is a report that he was found unresponsive in his house back in December. And whether that contributed to what he's dealing with now, nobody really knows. But what they are not doing is denying reports that he may have overdosed.
Correct.
Now, I don't want to say he did because we don't know this, but the police report that's being reported, if it is accurate, says Narcan was used. Narcan is used for overdoses.
Yep, exactly right.
It's actually... It's a miracle drug in this day and age of fentanyl.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, there is a lot of it. I, as a parent of a high schooler, am frightened by this. The drugs in my era are not the drugs of this era. Most of them wouldn't kill you on the spot, and this is one that has the propensity to do it, and it is frightening. So the fact that this exists to me, not to go on a tangent about this, is reassuring on some level that, that like this is available and it apparently like wakes people's bodies up almost like adrenaline used to immediately and takes them out of the immediate danger of death with these drugs, which is frightening, as a human and as a parent, but the fact that that was in the report about him, that Narcan was used, would suggest that there was at least fear by the emergency technicians that an overdose had occurred.
Right.
So no one could say for sure that it did. The police are not confirming this, but the Colts put out a statement and did not deny that.
That's right.
All they just basically said was, please respect his privacy.
Exactly.
He is in the hospital for a respiratory illness, and no one is suggesting whether that's linked or not linked to whatever happened in December.
The it's TMZ that found the documents or cited the documents and just said he was found in bed and was cold to the touch when emergency personnel got there and had a blue skin tone. I mean,
it's frightening.
Yeah, exactly right. So, I mean, don't know, but he's also had a history with using drugs.
And he vehemently denied the Andrea Kramer report when he did Real Sports recently, where he said that stupid thing about I was targeted because I'm a white billionaire.
Right.
And he vehemently denied that he was on any kind of narcotics or illegal narcotics or drinking the night that he got this arrest. And you see what looks to be like a DUI test video. He's slurring. He can barely stand up.
Yeah.
And he said he'd had surgery and they had given him, whatever pain medications, and that's why he was acting that way, which still doesn't make any sense as to why he was driving the car.
Correct.
But, he vehemently denies he was on any kind of illegal pain medication, and I don't want to accuse him of anything here, but this report is pretty damning.
Yep.
I mean, that's what it sounds like. All right,
Correct.
so that's what's going on there. Jason Kelce has not officially retired yet, so everyone is needed to back off a little bit of he definitively is. However, it still does feel like it's leading that way, and I want to play because he addressed it on his podcast with his brother called New Heights. He addressed his future today. Here's what he said about it.
Nick kind of gave me an opportunity to talk. I didn't announce what I was doing on purpose, despite, I guess, what's been leaked to the media. I just don't think you're in a position after a game like that to really make that decision. I just don't. There's too much emotion in the moment to really fully grasp that decision. I'm not trying to be dramatic and continue to draw this thing out. I'm really not. It's just something that I think, when it's time to officially announce, what's happening in the future, it'll be done in a way that's, definitive and pays respect to a lot of people and individuals that have meant a lot to me and has led to the career I've had. I don't think that it would be respectful or even accurate to be able to do that right after a game like that.
Yeah.
But I did address the team and pretty much said the same thing that I just said to you, which is, I got belief in every single one of you guys, cherish the moment you have in this league. A lot of guys like, if that is your last game, I feel sorry for you. And I'm like, don't feel sorry for me, motherfucker. I've had a
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, man.
All right, so that was Jason and Travis Kelce, and you could hear the emotion that was kind of running out of him. I've covered this stuff a long time. I think he is retiring. I think he was kind of saying that. I think he didn't like being preempted in his announcement, and maybe he's opened his mind to a 1% chance he will go Tom Brady and change his mind.
Yeah.
And understands that when the season ends, it's an extremely emotional thing. I live it too, in just being in the role that I have. Like when it's over, the finality of it is very hard to take because you're so in it for so long. And I can't only imagine when you're putting your body on the line like that, what it feels like.
Yeah.
So he's right to take a step back, but it's been kind of an open secret that this was probably it anyway. He also later, apparently, I didn't hear this part, but he apparently later said, I don't know what this team's going to look like after this year.
He's right. Yeah.
I think, I think everything's on the table here. Is Nick Sirianni coming back? Clearly it's going to be different coordinators again, no doubt.
Yeah.
Is A.J. Brown going to be back? Are there a lot of others that are not going to be on this team that just cratered so poorly for them? So I appreciate that he wants to do it on his own terms. I still believe he probably is retiring, but he's probably saying to himself, give me a minute here because I want to actually think about it too.
I talked about this in the break, but every single person that tweeted that out, I had a quote retweet of the previous tweet saying, oh, looks like not quite yet. He says on the podcast he's not officially retired. Everyone except Adam Schefter, who was the one that actually tweeted it out. And he wasted like no time. It wasn't right after the game, but it was like the same night, right? Like we woke up and it was out, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I think this was, and it was Kelce kind of not saying it to Schefter, but just going, let me do this on my own terms if it is indeed the end here. Like I have a lot of people, like you just said, to thank, to pay respects to honestly say thanks for a long career because we all kind of know he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer and he's going to go right into the booth. Like, I think what he was getting at there was more like, hey, man, give me 5 seconds to process a season that we cratered in over the last 10 weeks.
Yes.
Please just give me some privacy. And that, I think, is why he addressed it like he did today.
He's one of those two, I would say to him, and I hope, because he does have a flair for the dramatic. Your retirement press conference should be next to the Rocky statue or
wearing the mummer
in
thing
front of like
Super Bowl.
City Hall or something,
right.
or should be, like
Yes.
I think needs to be grand.
No, of course. And I think
it really should. I respect, I love this game and I love the players in it. It's hard to like love anybody who wears green or Dallas or whatever,
Right.
but he is top 5 player for me all time.
I agree.
Like he just, in
100%.
every way, shape, and form, the way he conducts himself, how he just bled that city, the way he played. He's the best center I've ever seen. And, I appreciate his popularity now. I appreciate that people recognize how good he was. It was Hembo does all the stats for Greeny and those guys. Put a long list of accomplishments that the Eagles offenses had that ended every sentence with, and Jason Kelce was the center. Like they broke a team record for rushing this year. Jalen Hurts had these numbers this year.
Yeah.
The tush push was created. Like it was just on and on and on of all these incredible accolades. And the one thing that was a constant was he was the center. And I've said this a lot about like the NFL just in general. When you have special players, I don't actually care what position they are. You pay them what they're worth and you take them along with you. And he deserved every penny he got. He was the best at his position by far, bar none. He's put his body on the line. No one's been more loyal to their team. I don't think there ought to be Kelce jerseys forever in green being worn in that stadium.
Yeah.
He is among my top 5 favorite players of all time, like outside of people who wore the jersey here. Like of the people that I really appreciate the careers that they had, he's just charged up the list, just the way he conducts himself, the way he's played the game, and now the way he's going out. Like I appreciate all this, and I think he deserves the right to do it his way.
I 100% agree. I also am just going to throw this out there too. Nobody's asked him about this, and like I referenced the tweet yesterday, but I do wonder this last year he's getting old, and they were relying on this tush push so much, and it was him.
Yes.
That was the literal center of it all, getting lower than the guy that was across from him. Like,
correct.
How much did that grind on him in this stage of his career too? Like, he might have said at the beginning of the year, I might have 2 left in me. And then after he's doing the tush push for the 100th time the other night and it fails, that might have been like I don't know how much more I can do this. Like, relying on me for a singular play to get us 2 yards. Mm-hmm. I have to think that probably has a factor in what's about to happen too. Like, you can't really do the Debo thing and go, hey, if I come back, we're only going to do the push a couple times, right? Like, he can't do that. He's a lineman. You cannot dictate that. So I wonder if that's a factor here too, where he's like, we have this play and I don't like running it after 100 times because it's killing me. So we'll see.
I am a touch surprised that Mike McCarthy and Nick Sirianni are both in their positions today.
I agree.
A little bit.
Yeah.
The flameouts, they're different, but the flameouts were so dramatic.
Yep.
And knowing one organization flips the script fast when they feel like things have gone sour, and the other one is an old man screaming the time is ticking, and will tell anybody who listens to him on sports radio across the universe, or like there's not a microphone that he's not willing to tell you exactly how he feels, which I appreciate about him, actually. Like, I think he's a great personality for the league. I can't believe they're both still there.
Yep.
So I do wonder, are they, here's my theory on it. They are both behind the scenes talking to these candidates. They want a commitment before they do it.
Yeah. I think that sounds about right.
I don't think that they are going to fire Mike McCarthy or Nick Sirianni unless they know who the successor is.
That's right.
That's what I think.
And
I think if Bill Belichick indeed wants to go to Dallas, I think Jerry will do it.
Or Philly.
But he wants maybe.
I told you, that's my dark horse.
Belichick, the report on him is that he wants to go to a team that is, quote, talented but underachieving. That's Dallas.
Okay.
That's Dallas.
All right.
Talented and underachieving.
Second half of the year, the Eagles fit that bill.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
The Eagles were in the Super Bowl last year.
Uh-huh.
So I agree. Like, I guess anybody could be who didn't win it, could be perceived that way. But Dallas, to me, is exactly that.
Yeah.
Talented and underachieving. Can't even get to the NFC title game. Win 12 games a year. Have a defense that's got a Hall of Famer on it who's in the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other players that flip games upside down. You should win with that. Jerry knows it.
Yeah.
You should win with that. So this screams to me, if they can get Belichick to take the job, then they'll fire McCarthy. But they're wise enough to know we're not just going to cut bait unless we know who the successor is.
Yeah, right.
And I think Philadelphia is probably doing the same thing today. But I don't know who they would want. Do they want the Belichick, or are they like, we flipped it around with first-time head coaches. We did it with him. Why don't we get Ben Johnson in here?
Right.
Is that out of the realm?
Right.
Because they're more, I think, open-minded to, we know what talent looks like.
That's true. Yeah.
I think Dallas looks at it and goes, I need a closer. So it screams Belichick to me, if he's interested in it. And if I'm Belichick, Would I rather spend the end of my coaching career in Atlanta or in Dallas?
Right.
And if I'm him, I'm taking a bet, 1, on Dallas's roster, 2, on what it means if I win there, 3, I solidify my legacy as the greatest coach of all time if I win there. Period. So I think if he wants that job, they'll fire McCarthy and give it to him. If he doesn't, I don't know what's going to happen down there. The Eagles are a wild card now.
Yeah.
They flamed out so bad, but because they're not, that'd be out of character for them to go for someone like that, actually. Like, I think that they'll look around and survey and go, if they think Bobby Slowick or Ben Johnson is the next whatever,
Right.
they would do that.
That's right.
And I think their fans would be all right with it because I think they're ticked off about what happened
They
here.
do not like Sirianni anymore.
No, they're over him.
Yeah, right, exactly.
They're over.
Because they saw it from a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
There's also all this talk too about, like, not unlike here, there was clearly not a lot of self-scouting with them either. That apparently for like the last 7-8 weeks they've been running the same plays and that it's been the same looks and that they haven't been able to.
Did you see the stat on the screen passes?
No, I didn't see it.
They ran, I don't remember, it was hundreds of screen passes for a grand total of negative 26 yards.
Oh my God.
With that offensive line.
Jesus.
Think about that for a second.
That's terrible.
Think about that for a second. They have Hall of Famers on their offensive line. They couldn't run
Kelce pulls as a center sometimes.
Couldn't run a screen
That's
game.
not a common thing.
Couldn't run a screen game.
Oof. The other thing, by the way, with Belichick in Atlanta, the only thing I would say that's a factor there is it is starting to come out to how great of an owner Blank is in terms of like player to player, person to person type deal. So it wouldn't shock me like if they have a little bit more of a chance than everyone thinks, mainly because I think Belichick would welcome that, like having an owner that is up to date with the players. Like he talks with his players. I saw this clip of Blank the other day where he went up to J.C. Horn, Joe Horn's son, and he was like, "Is Joe your dad?" And J.C. was like, "Yes, sir," like whatever. And he was like, you have to tell him thanks because we don't get Roddy White. We don't get as much out of Roddy White without your dad here, his last season of his career. Like, it was just something that was so detailed that an owner doesn't have to know.
That's
like,
right.
He knew that Joe Horn was his last year of his career because he was like a 4th or 5th wide receiver by that point when he was with the Falcons. It was just a clip that I was like, that's an owner that actually knows a thing or two about just being a people person.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that's why Belichick probably took the interview bare minimum because that's a franchise you don't really think of at first that Belichick would want to go to. But right away, I was kind of like, what? That makes sense. If Belichick thinks he's got a solid owner behind him, I think it's probably something he's more open to taking a team on like the Falcons.
And with Arthur Blank, too, and this is a compliment, he must be all in with them because some people do this. As he's gotten older, and you'll never be able to unsee this, he looks more and more like a real Falcon. If you actually look at him. Go look at him, especially when he wears like a red suit. You're like, that is a walking falcon.
He has like the
Look at
sharp
him.
facial features too. Yeah.
He looks like a falcon. He's turning into one. As John Chaney got older, he looked more and more like an owl. He did. He's a temple. He became an owl. This guy's becoming a falcon. He looks like one.
Jared just put a cowboy hat on.
Maybe he'll fly in. Who knows? As for Belichick and anybody who's going to coach the Cowboys next year, as I was talking about yesterday, Dak Prescott's going to be there.
Yep.
Joel Corey, who writes for CBS, former agent,
Of course.
wrote this about it. Okay, and here's why. And he laid out all the reasons why. 2024 season will be the final of a 4-year, $160 million deal that averages $40 million per year. It was signed in 2021. At the time, the deal made him the second highest paid player, despite the fact that he was recovering from the right ankle injury.
Yeah.
Prescott is scheduled to make $34 million this coming year, but the salary cap hit is nearly $60 million, 59.455. Thanks to all the restructurings that have occurred. The $34 million consists of an unsecured $29 million base salary and $5 million on the 5th day of the league year roster bonus, which obviously he's going to get. And then he goes on to say this. Prescott has leverage in any contract extension talks despite his performance against the Packers. His $60 million is the NFL's second highest 2024 cap hit behind Deshaun Watson at $63.9 million. Prescott has a no-trade clause in his contract.
Yes, I do remember that.
He also has a provision that prevents Dallas from designating him as a franchise or a transition player next year. So if they just play it out, this is it. As I explained yesterday, they're actually $11 million over the cap right now, which means they have to talk to him.
Yep.
They have no choice. CeeDee Lamb's contract is coming up. Micah Parsons is right around the corner. They ain't losing that guy.
Yeah, right.
Ain't no chance. So he says this. The Cowboys aren't really in a position to handle Prescott's $60 million cap hit. Dallas is currently facing $268 million in cap commitments, which would put them approximately $11 million over at this point. They could get all of that back if they did something where they restructured with him, which is the most likely outcome here. The problem is, how much is he going to hold them over a barrel for? Because is he going to give them a deal moving forward? Of course he isn't, because they're stuck.
Yeah.
So they're going to restructure with him. He's going to get $45 to $50 million a year. And they're going to have to deal with this down the road just to keep this team together for whoever the coach is. So, Bill, do you like Dak? Because he ain't going anywhere.
Right.
Nowhere.
To be fair, Bill hasn't had a quarterback of Dak's level, besides Tom Brady, of course. I'm without that. But between Jones and Zappy and whoever else he's started, Dak would be head and shoulders above any of those guys.
Yes.
So I would think Bill's probably fine with it. That's my guess.
Probably.
Because he's looking at it going, Dak's a Pro Bowl quarterback, bare minimum.
Yes.
And he's one of
I think Bill's also going, I can do the same thing with that defense Dan Quinn did.
Correct. If not more. And I think he's probably going, I can work with that. Yeah. Plus the skill position players. Like, look, Dak was in MVP talks at certain times this year. That's not going to go away.
If you're saying just let him go, here's what happens.
It's $80 million on
the Cowboys would be contending with $62 million of dead money.
Oh, God.
The dead money would be taken over the next 2 years because they would do that, right? But by doing that, because you could put the post-June 1st designation, which means $25 million this year, $36 million in 2025, right? And that would help the cap problem because you're eating the dead money, but the overage would be over with because you'd be getting rid of the rest of it.
Yeah.
However, if you do that, you have to carry the full $60 million on the books until June 2nd, which means you can't do anything in free agency and you can't re-sign anybody. So he's coming back.
What a shame.
Sorry, guys. Well, listen, this is everybody's problem when they get to the point where the quarterback makes this amount of money. Everybody's problem is this.
Right. Yeah.
When somebody makes that amount of the cap, they better be Tom Brady.
Correct.
Or you have to figure out how do you navigate it and work with it.
Right.
And in this case, there's that. They could release him. But then you're not signing a top tier one, which means you're drafting one. They're not drafting high enough to come anywhere sniffing distance to any of them. It'd be way out of character for them to give up the farm to go get Caleb Williams, albeit I wouldn't be shocked if Jerry thought about that in the last couple of years of what he feels like is his competitive life to go, screw it, give up 4 first-round picks. Like, does that, to me, that also is not out of the realm of possibility that Jerry goes, go get this Caleb Williams guy.
We have yet to see a team.
And give up the farm from where they're going to actually get him.
We've yet to see a team, though, do the cut and then competitive on the other side, except for the Buccaneers. And that was like the biggest talk of this year was like the Buccaneers have all this dead money from Brady retiring.
Yes.
So they had to sign a guy like Baker because he would sign on for $10 million.
Next year, they'll be free and clear of it. They'll be able to upgrade their team.
Exactly.
And if they love Baker, they'll probably sign him at what they hope is a reasonable rate, but it's not going to be $4 million.
Of course.
He's going to go back to
him and go.
Is
that what it is, 4?
It's 4 with some bonuses.
It's crazy.
But like next year when they re-sign him, he'll get 20 to 30. Yeah. It won't be what those other guys got. Maybe 20 to 30.
But what we're saying there is Jerry don't play that game. Like he's not going to sign the $10 million guy.
No.
Like he's not going to sign Garoppolo.
No, there are other choices here to go with Cooper Rush or Trey Lance.
Yeah.
They could cut him and go with those two. It would actually solve their cap problem, but are they actually better or a Super Bowl contender with Trey Lance as their quarterback?
Doubtful.
Only they know the answer to that. That's a risk, and if it blows up in their face, Jerry gets a lot of egg on his face for that one.
Yeah.
So Dak's coming back. Like, that's happening, and he's going to get extended because they kind of have to.
Right.
It's amazing.
Have fun with that, guys.
World. What a world, guys. All right, welcome back. The Philadelphia Inquirer, as all the media but Philadelphia's been doing, has been all over the Eagles' collapse. And today, obviously, they're talking about Jason Kelce, who may be retiring, did not commit to doing so today, but sounds like is heading in that direction. Yeah. And that's been an open secret throughout the year anyway. They wrote this about him. They said he's been concerned throughout, his playing career about long-term brain damage for those who play into their 30s.
In the documentary, he talks about it often.
And then he said this is an incredible quote. Kelce was also mentally fatigued. Quote, he's been playing nursemaid to 2 young, insecure quarterbacks for the past 9 years.
Oh, man.
Wow. That's quite a quote from whoever told the Philly Inquirer that. That is quite a quote.
I mean, that doesn't seem to be far off, right?
Well, we know about one of them.
You're right.
Who I don't think was that way in the year he was here, but learned his lesson about growing up a little bit.
Correct.
And actually, in his own way, kind of talked a little bit about it and admitted things have changed for him. I don't know about Jalen Hurts, and I'm a bit surprised to hear what's been coming out here, but the other day on the sideline, Dallas Goedert got into it with him.
Yep.
A.J. Brown's gotten into it with him, and now that quote seems to be in line with maybe Jalen Hurts is not the leader they were pretending that he was.
There's another thing here, too. This was uncovered on Twitter, because social media is just the best now with the NFL. Nothing can happen without people running it through something, right? And I talked to you about this off the air the other day. He had some eloquent, quote either after a game or on his Wednesday interview with the media where they asked him a question and he did one of those one of those docisms essentially where it was can only ride through the storm or some stupid quote like that. And somebody was like, that's a weird one. Where did you get that from? And they typed into ChatGPT inspirational quarterback quote during a press conference. And the exact thing came up on ChatGPT.
Is that because it had already happened, though?
That's a
you
good question.
You got to remember, ChatGPT learns by what's out there.
That's a good question, but why would it take it from a Jalen Hurts one that just happened the day before? And somebody basically said, is this guy a fake leader? He just has quotes at the ready and sounds really good because he's well prepared.
As a professor who contends with ChatGPT and knowing that everybody in my class cheats now, if you call it cheating, I don't actually.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
You don't.
Fair enough.
Okay.
And he's young enough that
Peyton Manning admitted he would practice what he was going to say to the media.
That's fine. I don't care about that. But when the quotes that you're coming up with aren't even yours, and you have to
maybe Ron should have done more of that. Go to ChatGPT.
He would have done it wrong because, as you know, if you're trying to cheat, you do have to read it over and then make it your own words.
ChatGPT. How should I position Sam Howell as the starting quarterback of the Commanders this year?
It would make sense because
just see what it says.
But
let's ask it.
But here's my theory on Hurts. I think we're starting to get Russ energy with him. I think it's getting to be where we like the way you play. We don't love the way you play, but stay in your lane now. Stop trying to be the leader of the team. Maybe you should let some other people do that. Because when you get up there, you're not instilling any confidence in anybody. And
they started getting on him too this year about his kind of demeanor, which is very, shows no emotion. And I was always kind of cool. I can't believe nothing seems to bother this guy. But
sometimes you need the spark though. Sometimes you need someone to grab the face mask and get in someone's face and just say, "Let's effing go." And
guys are up in his face all the time. He doesn't do anything about it.
Right. And I always look at Brady. Brady would pick his spots. He wouldn't yell at everyone the entire game. But when they screwed up on offense,
when he freaked out, he freaked out,
screaming at it was. Oh yeah, it was fun to watch, but at the same time, you're all right, you picked your spot, you're trying to motivate them. Whereas Hurts doesn't do.
There's a line between doing that and going crazy pants.
Right,
you just can't do it all the time.
Right,
that's why you have to pick the moments to do it, and they have to be appropriate, and everyone needs to understand it's appropriate. You get sacked on consecutive plays by a team that doesn't get sacks. It's time for you to get up in someone's face and go, "What are you doing today?"
Grab a face mask or hit someone's shoulder pads.
Wake up.
And when you're Brady too, you can do it more late in your career because you are the GOAT. People are going to listen to you. But the non-emotion from Hurts plus the team getting squirrely. When your team's getting wonky, Bram, who has to calm everything down and say, guys? It's your quarterback.
That's right.
And that didn't happen this year. So
let's see. You sent me favorite new theory in the NFL as to why the Bills are winning these days.
That's my favorite.
These people, they fall into the category of they probably will believe anything if it gets them a Super Bowl. This is a tortured fan base. They went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost them all. That's a crime against humanity, really. Crime against football.
History's
humanity.
Been kind to them on that, too. Everyone has always said, that's the most impressive run without winning anything.
True.
Ever.
It'd be one thing if they played the same team 4 times. They played 3 different teams and lost all of them. So that's tough to take, and it's a crime against football humanity. And then in recent years, they arguably have the best or second best quarterback in the NFL, and they keep getting close and they can't win.
Right.
And that's brutal.
And they keep the vibes up too. They just keep chugging along.
And their stadium, their fans are awesome. It's an awesome environment. Anyway, from the not great source Pick'em Petey, who posted it, but we like this, posted this on TikTok. So we're now part of the alternative media now that doesn't mind listening to literally anybody say anything on the internet and take it at its word. But we think he has a good point. Here's Pick'em Petey on why the Bills are suddenly winning all of a sudden.
This was before the Steelers game, so bear
before
with
the Steelers game, but
the talk here.
It falls into the category of they haven't lost since.
Yeah.
So here you go.
The Bills-Steelers game has been moved from Sunday to Monday due to weather and limited travel abilities, which is a big change for the Bills. The Bills have won 5 games in a row, and they credit the success due to a tradition they began right before the winning streak started. Let me explain. The Bills have begun construction on a new stadium which is supposed to ultimately look like this in a few years. Currently, however, it looks like this, just one giant pit that is soon to be a football field. Many Bills fans and citizens of Buffalo have gone in to check this out, and some have even fallen into the pit. After the first fan fell into the pit, the Bills' win streak began, and that's when Bills Mafia realized to win games, the pit must be fed. Here's further documentation from the local emergency room in Buffalo, New York, talking about how the pit has received a victim before every single Bills victory. What initially began as an accident is now a ritual that Bills fans must ensure they complete in order for the Bills to keep winning. The Bills went 17 years without making a playoff game and have never won a Super Bowl, so the fans are absolutely ready to do whatever it takes to win, and you can ensure that someone will be fed before every single game.
Okay. All right. So I just started the new True Detective Night Country, and this kind of falls into the category of this higher being needs to have a human sacrifice to get what you want.
Bills and Illuminati, apparently. Same thing these days.
Also should be pointed out, the Bills haven't lost since a report came out that Sean McDermott cited Al-Qaeda as a group that was very organized. So, it could be that too. Or, I don't know, maybe they have a good team and they just started winning again. Could be that. They have a really, really good quarterback. Yeah, could be that too. Could be that. But now that this is a thing and obviously that they talk about, Maniac and Degenerate Al clearly are going to have to anoint somebody. So now, who is the person who sacrifices themselves and jumps into the pit in, oh, by the way, minus 13 temperatures? Who does that for them this weekend when they play Kansas City?
It's a good question. I also have to ask some weird questions here. Now that it's an actual bit, there's going to be safety people trying to make it safer to jump into the pit.
But does that ruin it?
That's what I'm saying. It has to be the same way it's been.
If you're going to sacrifice yourself to the gods by jumping in the volcano kind of can't be dormant.
That's right. So this is where things are going to get wonky. Do you have to do it wrestling style and have a paramedic on standby so if someone hurts themselves?
If this worked, would you be mad that you didn't figure this out years ago as a Bills fan?
That wherever the parking lot
was?
was?
Sacrifices.
No, not necessarily. Because if you do win a Super Bowl before the new stadium opens up, it's all worth it. And then you're literally on hallowed ground. That the stadium all of a sudden is magical.
It's true. It is true. You make a good point.
What do we call our podcast on this?
I'm not sure.
Sports Max?
A series of these theories would be pretty good.
I think people would go nuts over it.
Yeah.
Like Baby Shark. We would have to do a whole show on Baby Shark.
Baby Shark, but nobody, put their lives on the line by singing a dumb song.
No, but Steven Strasberg was line dancing in the dugout.
That's true. I'm all for good karma, good juju. This seems to be from the metaphysical and that you must appease some kind of football god by sacrificing somebody. That's a new one, okay? That's a new one. Someone must risk their life and potentially die in a parking lot pit so that the Bills win a Super Bowl. That seems to be going a stretch too far for me, but in the era of QAnon and fake news, who knows? Maybe they're right.
Here's what I want, actually. I want, if they make it to the Super Bowl, I want a Super Bowl party in the pit.
I agree with that. I think if they do win the Super Bowl, that does become hallowed ground, and you have the victory parade end at the pit.
Yes, correct. And
then what, they all jump in unison? Is this kind of like a mass? Everybody drink the Bills Kool-Aid and jump into the pit. And then these emergency technicians are like, this is the worst day of my life. Like, why
Here's
800 people jumped into a pit?
I think
makes no sense to me.
I think we actually should be more concerned with pre-Super Bowl activities than after Super Bowl activities, because I think you're going to get people in the pit setting up flaming tables, and we're going to combine all of the Bills Mafia things together.
But when is the sacrifice too much, and when do the gods push back that you're doing too much?
What gods are you talking to that say you sacrifice too much?
I don't know.
So that's not a thing. Nobody's ever said we sacrifice too much to the gods.
Is there someone who is spoken to, metaphysically and told you are the one that must jump into the pit? And what if the wrong person jumps into the pit?
That's a good question, actually.
Right?
That's right. I don't know.
It opens the door for a lot of questions here. Like, if you believe this to be true, then you'd have to think on some level there are the chosen Bills fans that must jump in the pit.
Chosen Bills
and
fans.
the non-chosen Bill fans that shouldn't jump in the pit. And if they did that, it would actually be their fault that they lose.
And you have to make sure it's a true Bills fan, not a bandwagon Bills fan,
if you jump in the pit and they lose to Pat Mahomes, are you then Bartman?
Ooh.
Right?
I don't think so, because you have a history of losing, so it's not just your fault.
Yeah, but if you believe that jumping in the pit is necessary to ensure the Bills winning from here forward, then if you jump in the pit and they lose, what does that make you? That makes you a chaos agent that must be destroyed, and you must leave Buffalo immediately and become a fan of the Titans. Right?
You know what I hope?
If you believe all this, then that's the logical conclusion to all of it. That, like, somebody is going to be the wrong person to jump into the pit and tick off the gods in the wrong way so that the Bills lose 48-7.
I do have people on this tweet that had the video from TikTok, because I think that's worth explaining, and they're debunking it. They're saying the first guy that fell in week 2.
Oh.
And they lost.
And they lost. So this is not even true anymore.
So they're not undefeated.
Again, this is why you don't take your sources from the internet, Aaron.
But what if it's both? What if people started jumping in the pit and they went on a win streak?
Yeah.
They're just not undefeated at that point. They're 5-1.
Okay. Listen, I'll believe anything these days.